try to explain the difficulties for a regulatory point of view in control of drinking water in Belgium. C'est pas ça. The background of the control of the drinking water is a European directive. We asked to the member state to put in place a screening program to verify the quality of drinking water. And it was a screening program with parametric value. To monitoring the drinking water in Belgium, we already have a limit for the dose for the public, as well in existing situation and in planned exposure. This limit is 1 millisievert per year. But for existing situation, because of the BSS and the European, we put in place a reference level for 1 millisievert per year. After that, we also know that the natural background for a person in a year is around 250 millisievert per year. And the Commission put the screening with a total indicative dose for 1.2 millisievert per year. Why show you this dose is because you have to understand that we are a low level of dose. And this is a prudent level. That will not say that the water is not unconsumable and drinkable water. As regulatory, we have to reflect, was it adequate, was it reasonable? We have to have action commensurate to the level of risk, and we have to be sure of the risk perception. And as in Belgium, as in Switzerland, we didn't receive finance as authority for such kind of level of dose. To define what is adequate, we have to consider the societal aspect. I will be quick on this problem, but Belgium is 3 languages, 3 communities, Flemish communities, French communities, and German communities. And you can see that we also have a nuclear power plant. We can have influence on the quality of drinking water. I give you some providers of water, 152 providers in the Flemish communities and 36 providers in the Wallonia communities. I will explain after why it's big difference. Again, we have region, and region is authorities regarding the quality of water. We have Flemish region, Walloon region, Brussels region. But Federal Agency for Nuclear Control is regarding radio protection in the quality of water. And it's not enough to consider our problem. It's also a geographical problem in Belgium. If you look at the concentration of radon, you can see a big difference between the Flemish region and the Walloon region. The radon can influence the total indicative dose of water. It's not enough. We have several kinds of power level. Regions have the same level of the federal level in case of law or in regulation. We have an intermediate level, the province, and in fact, the people who is drinking the people is at the level of the communes. What we put in place to make the screening, it's a systematic collaboration between the authorities. We have nothing as federal agency to make at the common level near the public. We have to know how to discuss with this public, the consumer. Risk management. We have to be careful because the risk perception in the public can be very different. In the water, we have several scope of risk. We have biological risk, we have chemical risk, and we have radiological risk. The stakeholders, the public, can misunderstand what we say. And for the moment in Belgium, we have a big problem in the food. We have pig fever, and we have chemical contamination with egg. That's the perception of the public. We have to be careful for the perception of the problem in water. It's why we choose as regulatory to take in place the prudence and radioprotection. We choose to oblige each provider to control all radionuclides and with a frequency decided by the federal agency. The stakeholders. We, in our regulation, we have a mandatory consultation process where we can find the public. We have the authorities, but the authorities with the information. When the water is not drinkable, we have to inform the public. And inform the public is not the role of the Federal Agency for Nuclear Control. We have other stakeholders, the provider, water, and food industry. If you are looking in the European directive, there was no problem with the food industry. But in Belgium, we also have crisis. And the crisis was for the potatoes and the chips. One producer of potatoes take his water in the ground. He was the providers of waters, and he has problem with these waters. But as regulatory, we cannot have any requirement on this water. It's why we add the food industry in our regulation for quality control. And another important stakeholders, the laboratories, where maybe you can find exposed water, but I am sure you can understand that we have no radiological impact in the quality in normal situation with the drinking water. And finally, the public. We have several types of water: groundwater, surface water. In Belgium, we mixed all. And we also have water coming from Dutchland, France, and Netherlands. We define also the food sector, the contact water, and the incorporation water. The contact water is the water used to wash the food. The public perception. It's a big problem because when you are looking to this directive, and you can have exceeding parametric values, but that will not say that the water is not potable. If we, after those assessments, after remediation, not a sense of remediation, you can have potable water, or you can have undrinkable water. We also have a big actor, a big authority in this kind of matter. It's the Federal Agency for Safety of Food Chain. It's the authority in charge of the egg and of the pig for the moment. We have the same type of water, but in this authority, exceeding parametric value will say undrinkable water. It's why it's difficult to the public because the chain of information is the chain of information of the Agency for Safety, Food and Change. And the exceeding parametric value coming from France is not necessarily undrinkable, and the exceeding parametric value coming from the other risk is undrinkable. Thus, we have a loss of public confidence. What is reasonable? we try to estimate the public confidence at FANG systematically. And I give you some kind of survey. Because of the two communities, we can see that in Wallonia, they are less confident in the federal agency than in Flanders. Remember, 150 providers in Flanders, 36 providers in Wallonia. Again, when we are looking to the scope, we are looking in the public perception, we can see, it's why you see the... Je sais pas comment on l'allume. Enfin, bon. For the drinking water, we have no problem. We only have problem for the nuclear power plant. We have the public perception in radiological risk is more for nuclear power plant, industry, and medical application. Again, a big difference between French speaker and Netherlands speaker. You can see it was a problem with nuclear power plant, a problem of contamination of a river, or a problem of new regulation, public perception of the risk. Alors, the radiological risk in the quality of water is rarely dominant. It's why I explain, and I give you the number of communication in July 2018. 4 for the nuclear control and 35 for the Federal Agency for Food and Chain. Thus, it's why we decide prudence in radio protection was reasonable. Economical aspects. The superior health of council in charge of the health of the public say to us, we prefer that you consider also the total indicative dose for children and for adults. But again, the political consideration in the parliament say no. It's why we make a compromise. We can make radiological assessment if non-conformity, and we make radiological assessment in non-conformities for children in case by case if it's necessary. The financial cost. It was also the drinking water. We suppose that we will give the financial cost to the final consumer. But when you see the number, it's too less. It was not possible to put the financial cost of the quality of water to the consumer. And it comes in the providers which pay the laboratory. And in Belgium, we cannot have a so big difference between providers. From one provider, it was 10,000 euro, and for other providers, it was 100,000 euro to satisfy the same requirement. It's a legal uncertainty. The difference between providers is not acceptable. It's why some providers make appeal. It's why we have so less providers coming from Wallonia. They say you have no right to put this obligation on us. Alors, what can we say? We choose the prudence and we choose an equity for the public exposure. We cannot intervene on the source. If the parametric values are exceeding, we can do a dose impact, and FANG is always providing advice on radiological effect. FANG is also providing the central database to have all the data of control of water. We have a big difference of provider as well in Flemish region of in Walloon region. And we also only have 2 cases of exceeding parametric value due to radon in the groundwater. We have no problem in our providers. We consider that no exposure workers are affected by this requirement. We consider that we have an acceptable level of risk. We don't see any more increasing collective dose for public in the quality of drinking water, but as regulator, we don't have evaluation tool for the health detriment. For the communication to public, we put in place survey to estimate the confidence of the public, and we have no systematic demonstration of compliance in the drinking water at FANC. We only have in the way by the provider which are informed the public. And our conclusion after 2 years, it's too expensive and too dependent for the provider. And we have legal uncertainties. Providers didn't obey all the requirement, and we cannot impose for the moment. It's why we try to solve that. The uncertainty is at the level of the member state, but we can consider the economical aspect for the providers. We discuss with them. These providers are contributing to the risk assessment, and we make a revision of our tree of deceit and to the number of control to minimize the cost of this control. For the exchange between FANC and the laboratories, we can discuss, and we have a kind of matrix to evaluate the criteria of frequency. Minimum, it's one per year. If we find a radon risk, we make more frequency. If we are in affected by a nuclear power plant, again more risk of local circumstances as lead. And after geological analysis and no power plant, we can say no control of tritium. But it's an analysis between the laboratories, the providers, and the FANC. For the framework of regional level, we have systematic collaboration between the authorities, and we have systematic framework with the control of the food chain. The problem is that the radiological risk is integrated in the other risk. Conclusion, too conservative, it was our choice. As an expert in radio protection, we accept that, but we can now live with that. We have to consider something, and I will say here that what Roger writes, the system of protection cannot be based only on science, but must take into account ethical judgment and experience. Thank you.